everybody okay with that? All right. All right, we will call the Public Safety Committee to order. So first order of business, I guess, need a motion to waive the reading of the minutes, previous meeting.
So moved, Mary Kuhn.
Second.
Second. Oh, Melanie, do we have to call the roll before we go?
Yep, I'll do it after you do the.
Okay, all right,
recording and
sorry.
stuff.
Okay, motion made.
First by
Legislator Hughes.
Hune
Legislator-
and second by Holmquist.
I think that might have been Raleigh, but
Okay.
I think it
that's
was
fine.
Raleigh.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
all right,
Okay, and then approve the minutes.
yes. I think a motion to approve the minutes, previous committee meeting.
So moved, Kuhn.
Second.
Great,
Second motion.
okay.
All
And I'll take the roll call.
right,
Legislator Ryan,
here.
Rowley,
Yes.
Hune,
Here.
Holmquist,
Here.
McBride,
Here.
all present. Thank you.
All right, so first order of business, two additional appoints to the JCOC, Justice Center Oversight Committee. So this is two additional, this almost, well, it would have another vacancy, but just about fills us out, fills the committee. And so we have a couple appointments that are here. These are both chair legislative appointments, as we did last month was a mayoral appointment. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Chairman Knapp.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I have the pleasure of presenting two appointments to the Justice Center Oversight Committee. As everyone knows, this committee does a great job for us, led by Marissa Mims, who is absolutely outstanding in her role leading this committee. And so I wanted to first thank her and the existing committee for all the work that they've done. And the two individuals leaving the committee who asked not to be reappointed, so it's a voluntary that they're leaving. Carlton Strahl and Nick Parro, we thank them for their service on this committee and appreciate their efforts. So with that, we have two appointments to fill those two seats. The first is Carrie Ann Crumby. I do not know Carrie Ann personally, but from the folks I've talked to and looking at her resume, it's very, very, very impressive. And they were actually, it was a recommendation by Marissa and other members of the committee itself that we put Carrie Ann Crumby on. So I'm happy to present that. The second appointment, Greg Scammell. I actually have known Greg for, well, pushing 40 years now. Greg is an outstanding individual. Again, you can see by his resume that he put together quickly for us that it's really actually a little bit understated, but Vietnam combat veteran, long range reconnaissance patrols. Right out of high school, literally, and he's gotten his education, served as town supervisor and town board member in the Lafayette town government for 30 years and retired from Niagara Mohawk / National Grid. And then since then, he's been a substitute school teacher and at several school districts around the country, as well as many other things as you can see on his resume. But the one that really struck me in talking to him over the last several years is his involvement with jail ministry. And so he has been in the Justice Center at least several times a week pre-COVID. working with inmates, helping them get in touch with their lawyers, their family, or just someone to talk to, and just a great individual. So he has firsthand knowledge of what's going on, from the inmate's point of view. And so I think he will be an excellent addition to this board, and certainly has a great attitude going in. So I look forward to both of these people joining the committee, and I think they'll do a great job.
Okay, Chairman Knapp, thank you very much for the information. And yeah, I'll say it too, and I'm glad, very happy that they're stepping forward and volunteering their time and taking interest in this, really, really important committee that's doing really great work. So I guess if I will open up the floor, I guess, to additional discussion, questions regarding the two appointees. Okay, so I guess not really hearing any discussion. I guess I will just, if anybody interested, take a motion to approve the two committee appointments.
So moved, Mary Kuhn.
Second. I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Legislator Kuhn, for the motion, and Legislator McBride for the second. So, okay, any discussion? All right, hearing none. Melanie?
There, Legislator Ryan,
Yes.
Rowley,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Holmquist,
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 noes.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Thank you, committee members, Chairman Knapp. So the next order of business, and I believe Sheriff Conway is on, and I did see Mr. Bladley, right? I always call him Commissioner Bladley because he's always going to be, for me, the 911 commissioner, but in a new role up at Janesville. So, so let me just say this. I want to first say thank you for being here with us, but I just want to open, I guess start this discussion, right? So we had, and I'll tell you where this came from. It was brought to my attention, albeit, secondhand, of conversations that perhaps may be going on with the county executive and potentially some members of our state delegation, which are good, right? And specific to any sharing, consolidation, or where we're headed with some of our correctional facilities, both the Janesville Correctional Facility and our jail. So I thought that while those conversations are, if those conversations are ongoing, I thought that it would be very, very, very important for this committee to know about any of those or those discussions, or where if those conversations are happening, where they're headed, their trajectory, notwithstanding the fact that there are not just necessarily budgetary implications, but also implications with capital improvement projects, capital improvement dollars, taxpayers' dollars. So, and I think if I'm correct in understanding, the conversations are as a result of within the governor's budget is a plan, I guess, to removing barriers, if you will, on the state level, or the ability for to close or share correctional facilities, consolidate sharing the services. So I guess with that said, I just would like to hear it. And if we have any information, if the sheriff has some information, or if they have some insight, would they be willing to? Well, hopefully they would. Could they be willing to share that with this committee and see where we're headed, so that we can make some good decisions about the future of these two facilities? So I guess with that said, I guess I'll cue that up and turn that over to Sheriff Conway.
Good afternoon, everyone, and appreciate the opportunity to come on. And certainly talk about this. This will be pretty short for me, and you'll see why here in a second. Just about a year ago, last January, I believe it was, the county executive wanted to discuss with me in his office, and we had a meeting, and it was the result of the attempt last year to allow counties to share jail facilities. It was a measure that did not wind up passing, but apparently I believe he had been to a county executives group or whatever across the state, and this came up. And actually, before I even heard about this from the county executive, I had a phone call from my counterpart in Cayuga County, Sheriff Skank, who wanted to know and thought that I already knew about a conversation that the county executive here had with the county executive over in Cayuga County. I don't recall that person's name. And I think the conversation may have occurred during that association meeting or whatever. So when I asked Sheriff Skank, what's he talking about? He said, well, you haven't heard. He said, our two county executives have maybe talked about the possibility of sharing jails, or I think it was sending all the inmates from Cayuga County over to Onondaga County. So obviously, Sheriff Skank realized that I had no idea what he was talking about. And then it was probably several days later that I got a call from the county executive asking me if we could meet. So we went over there, and he talked about there being at that time a pretty big deficit that was going to be, I think, handed down from Albany, and a budget shortfall, had to make up money, blah, blah, blah. And the conversation was about basically us opening our jails to take on additional inmates from other counties. And I listened to that, and then I cautioned him against going down that road, because it was always been my feeling, even before I was a sheriff and what I had read about, that the inmates in a facility are always more of a liability to a county than they are anything else. And I know that Onondaga County has seen that. And so I was a little surprised that he wanted to, quote, take on more liability rather than less, meaning more inmates rather than less inmates. And I understood the conversation from his end to be, well, it will generate income. So I continue to caution him against that, and said, maybe there is another way off the top of my head that we could talk about saving money. And so at that time, I just off the top of my head floated the idea of maybe there'll be an opportunity for us to bring all of our inmates under one facility, meaning obviously downtown, because that's the larger facility. But I had no information, I had no background. It was just something that I floated. That was the only conversation that I have had at my level with anybody in the county executive's office since that time, plain and simple. So obviously, I've heard over time that different people from, I guess, deputy county executive may have talked to you or your group. There have been no conversations. Obviously, COVID happened right after that. And we've been focusing, obviously, on keeping our inmates and our staff healthy. But there has been no other conversations from my office with anybody on the 14th floor about this, plain and simple.
Okay. Well, thank you. So with the, I guess for sake of argument, and I guess it's maybe a hypothetical, do you think that where we are perhaps where we're headed with the, I mean, I guess also as a result of bail reform and with respect of inmate populations declining, which I think is part of the reason that the governor is initiating action, right? So it kind of, would it make sense and does it make sense? And I think that having two facilities half utilized may not make the best sense, but at the same time, there's also a lot of discussions and a lot of implications, notwithstanding bargaining units and everything else that have to talk about. But so as of right now, there aren't any additional discussions that you have had after that meeting. So you don't really know where we're headed with it.
Correct.
Okay,
But since I'm on the call, and again, that's why I was looking forward to speak to the committee. I just, again, want to share some background with you because I've always felt that the more somebody knows about something, the better they can make a decision or a judgment on something. And as you know, obviously, my background's always been about trying to do things more efficiently and always trying to, squeeze the most out of taxpayer dollars. It was one of the reasons why I brought forth the idea of bringing Janesville under the sheriff's administration 2-3 years ago. Simply looking at numbers, and I know, the county executive or staff, they look at the same numbers or see the same numbers that we see each month, inmate numbers. And I would caution against just making decisions based on numbers for a couple of reasons, and here's why. Most of you know, obviously, and have a history of the Justice Center being overcrowded and all the problems that caused. We weren't, I don't think, even 2 months, maybe 3 months into bail reform and raise the age being in place when COVID hit. And as you may know, courts came to a screaming halt. Inmates couldn't get trials, still can't get trials. To try to judge in the last 12 months about what populations are really accurate, I just don't think is good right now based on everything that's been upside down. A further example of that is that when someone is found guilty here in Onondaga County and they are sentenced to more than 1 year, which means they cannot go to Janesville, they go to a state facility. And the practice has always been that we can then consider those inmates what's called state ready. And historically, the pattern has been that twice a month, the state will tell us how many state-ready inmates they're willing to accept from our jail. We don't tell them, they tell us. Well, since COVID happened, the state has now put into place, and it's still in effect, a hold. They're not accepting any state-ready inmates from our facility or any other county jail in New York State. We now have more state-ready inmates up at Janesville than we have Janesville inmates, closing in on 100. So again, this kind of all goes into play here when we're trying to forecast 6 months from now, or maybe even a year from now, what our true populations will be. And again, I will remind everyone here that when you get to a point where your facility is full or almost full, then you start having to board inmates out. It's a cost. Beyond the cost, and I brought it to the committee's attention in the past, because there are other ramifications when you board somebody out. Inmates obviously has visitation rights. It's much harder to have a family member visit an inmate when they have to travel to Madison County Jail, Cortland County Jail, Cuyuga County Jail, than it is to go to the Justice Center and see them, to go to Janesville and see them. Attorneys likewise, attorneys need to have conversations and meetings with inmates while they're in the holding facility. It makes that less convenient for them. Those are all factors we deal with when we have to board somebody out. And I can tell you that Justice Center has the capacity of 700 beds. There's never going to be a way where, based on all the regulations that the Commission on Corrections puts in place, where we'll be able to fill every one of those beds. So that number right there is a misleading number. We have to separate male from female. We used to have to separate juveniles from adults. Now we don't have juveniles. We have to separate female medical patients from male medical patients. There are many other internal regulations that people who just look at population numbers don't realize and don't take into account. So I am certainly not opposed to looking towards a plan where if we have a facility that basically is half full or a quarter full, that it would be wise and efficient and in the best interest of everybody overall to put them in one facility. I just don't think we're even near that point yet until we get some semblance of normal when it comes back to this issue of COVID. The good thing about having a little bit of a reduced population right now and having COVID is we've been better able to separate our inmates by having 2 facilities and having some inmates go up to Janesville when we needed to isolate more inmates rather than trying to isolate them within the Justice Center. So that's actually been a plus right now of having 2 different facilities. And you mentioned at the beginning about we have 2 different titles of personnel working. We have CSEA members versus DSBA members. We have 2 different exams. We have many vacancies on both sides, and we're kind of struggling with that right now. So those are all things that have to be taken into the mix of just saying, okay, the population is this at Janesville and it's this at the Justice Center. Let's shut down Janesville.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, if we're sending inmates out, if we're full, right, then we can't take in federal inmates, right? That's a, and listen, this isn't a cost savings or a cost losing money or making money. It's unfortunate, but it's the fact is that, you know, not as a result of raise the age and bail reform, we have lost inmate populations, but I can go back because for as long as I've been on the ledge, right, I've been on this committee, and I think I believe, right, in the beginning, Legislator Holmquist was the chair. We were in a different spot, having a different conversation about minimum staffing levels, and we were full, right? We were having we were talking about a capital improvement project to build out another tower in the Justice Center. So we've kind of come, the discussion has come a long way. So, all right. So I mean, listen, I really appreciate that. And again, to the bargaining units, you know, what are those going to look like? And can they bring everybody down? And who's going to watch them? And now you have 2 different titles, and you know, we're still, you know, that's one of those contracts, or both of them are still expired, and see what happens. And, you know, you've got one title making less money than the other, and hopefully we get there with that contract, specifically to the CSCA portion of it. But, you know, we'll see. But we talk about capacities and everything else, but I think we have a lot of talk. There's a lot of discussion that needs to happen. So, so I'll stop talking. I guess everybody else. So where else do we feel? Do we have any other questions for the sheriff from the committee as to where we think this might be going in the short term or the long term, or what questions we need answered?
Chairman,
Oh, I didn't know Brian May was on. Leader May, please.
good afternoon. I don't, I guess I'll defer to the committee first. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Legislator Rowley.
Sheriff, I appreciate you being here today, and I certainly appreciate your insight and your input. You know, based on what you told us, it makes perfect sense to me. I'm just curious about one thing. Is there the ability to have private operators of jails in New York State? Are you familiar with that at all? Have you seen it? And you know, not that it could necessarily work here, but I'm just wondering if that is an option long term.
Well, I know that there are no private jails in New York State, and so I would think that there's probably something preventing that from happening. But there are privately run facilities throughout the United States. I know those mostly to be of a maximum security type rather than a local type of facility. But to your point, obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, you know, the county went to a private vendor for medical a few years ago, and I guess that's one step in that direction. But I don't know of any in New York State.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else on the committee has questions before Leader May?
Just
As
a
your
quick-
legislator, Kuhn? Okay.
Just a quick response to Legislator Rowley's question. There's a great national movement to move away from that kind of private privatization. And I actually have heard and haven't looked into it enough yet, but I've heard that there is not necessarily a lot of happiness with the current medical. And I worked for the county years ago when the county also staffed the Justice Center or the jail with county employees. And I know that going privately has had its lots of ups and downs. So just a response to that. I hope we don't go in that direction.
Leader May?
Thank you, Chairman, and Sheriff, thank you. It's good to see you. I guess as a, we're a policy-making board, management, fiscal, So when I look at this, the one thing, the situation that is, the one thing that's kind of stayed in my mind, and I'd love to have you just speak to it a little bit. I've always been led to believe, and I think this really matters, in addition to seeing how things shake out after COVID, to see how bail reform and all these other things really impact us once we get rid of the distractions. We got to have that time. I agree with what you're saying there. But I also understood there to be a problem with local control over staffing levels, and that you have limitations because of the way your staffing levels are dictated from the state, as I understand it, in both the jail and the Justice Center. Could you speak to that at all? Because is that still an issue, or don't we know until we get some of these distractions behind us? I saw that as a real problem a while ago.
Yeah, staffing levels have always been, kind of contentious type of discussion. This is where the commission comes into play pretty heavily. I know even before I took office, the previous administration would repeatedly ask the state, the Commission on Correction, to do a staffing analysis. And I know one of the reasons that was done was there was a feeling that, well, maybe the sheriff's office is just always trying to get more employees to have more employees. So taking it, from a different perspective, meaning the commission, maybe that would be more of an objective type of analysis. However, they never responded to those repeated requests to do an analysis, even when they come in and do an audit. So I think there's obviously a reason behind that. And to this day, even since I took office, we cannot get the Commission on Corrections to give us a staffing analysis that then maybe we could bring forward to the ledge or the county exec and say, here's what an outside agency feels is necessary or appropriate. So one of the benefits at the moment, even though they're two different titles, we have been able to move the inmates back and forth between the two facilities and have basically two different titles of people watching over them. And that's been tested a little by the unions. And it's come back that, we are in compliance with being able to do that. So that's a good part of it right now. I don't think there's any doubt that bail reform and raise the age will diminish populations. And that's fine with me. It really is. Again, I just think it's so premature to be kind of trying to forecast that when we're not out of the woods right now or getting any semblance of normalcy or being normal back.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Sheriff.
Does that answer your question?
It sure does. I really was kind of thinking more in terms of day-to-day management and not so much the legislature's ability to approve or have a say in how you staff. I was thinking more in terms of the sheriff's department's ability to make day-to-day decisions on how to staff based on the needs of whatever levels of population we end up with once the dust sort of settles on this stuff and there's some measure of normalcy.
Yeah, well, what I've always done is I've tried to measure and, use projections about, okay, where's our 101 line at this time of year versus where's our overtime line,
Right.
at a point in time. And so now we are, 75, 80 vacancies down overall. So our 101 is down, but obviously now our overtime line is up. So that's really what we pay most attention to. And right now, on the police side, we're able to attract more police laterals, since there's no academies going on. On the custody correction side, we're really hurting, and there is no academy. We are talking right now about trying to have an academy to fill some of those positions, with doing it in a very safe way at the moment. Those discussions are going on all the time, because we feel that we probably need to fill 12 positions at a minimum right now between the two facilities. But here's an example. As you know, or hopefully know, the courts are basically closed. All the municipal courts are closed. We have a transport unit, so they're not doing court transports. So we have been using them to backfill some of our vacancies in our housing sections or in our booking area. So we have that ability to move some of those employees around based on what the greatest need is at the moment. So we've been keeping our head above water based on that. But the other thing obviously is, knock on wood, as of yesterday, we have no inmates in either facility positive, and we only have one employee positive, and we feel strongly that that positive case came from other than being in the facility, because they've been off work for quite a while. So that's what we're trying to focus on right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. So Sheriff, but is the number you mentioned that you're looking to backfill, or I know that we've been talking about putting up on a class. I think that we've been perhaps short, or considered to be short if we lose some more to retirement. But I think that's specific up to Jamesville. Is that a fair question? And then you talked about putting 12 people on. Where would they be? And does the amount of people you have on the 101 line correlate to inmate populations? And it's hard, right? So we don't know what's going to happen. To Leader May's point, and everybody else's point, we got to find out what happens after we get through all this and how we're going to staff accordingly. I mean,
Yeah,
and again, we don't have a choice. So we are mandated by the state to have X amount of guards for each for inmate population. So we don't have, we'll get there. I just didn't know where we think we're headed.
Well, the guidelines that speak to personnel in each of the facilities from the Commission on Correction actually pertain to what function are you providing for that inmate, and therefore you have to have it. For instance, a small example would be church services. Inmates are entitled to church services. So we always have to make sure that we have a deputy or 2 or 3, depending on the number of inmates, that are able to obviously oversee that church service. So if we don't have church services because we don't have enough staff to fill that, that report goes to Albany, and then they come back to us and say, you better find people that have church services because you're in violation of that inmate's rights. So that's more where our staffing holes need to be filled more than the overall population number. Going back to your other comment, we have more of a need right now at the Justice Center for employees because we have more inmates there. Probably about twice as more inmates at the Justice Center right now than up at Corrections. So, but there are 2 different lists. And when you canvass that list, you're usually asking the same candidate, even though they took 2 separate exams, which position are you interested in? And by and large, they're going to take the one that has better salary, better schedule, so on and so forth. So that's been kind of a challenge for us as to, filling both of those titles, especially when they're at the same time. So right now we're looking at how do we best fill the custody positions and then fill the correction positions, but ultimately filling both. We heard that some surrounding counties are actually going forward with academies. We've talked to the state about the ability to have a virtual academy and get their permission to do that. Although that's going to be a little difficult because part of the custody and corrections academy involves defensive tactics. And obviously you can't do that virtually. So I think we're in probably within a couple months of trying to hold a very small class in person, taking all the precautions we can so that we don't fall deeper into staffing vacancies.
All right, last question, Sheriff, I promise. So you said, you went back, originally you said that there was we have some inmates that are obviously have been sentenced. The sentence is more than a year, hence since they've been sentenced, they have left the Justice Center. And since it's going to be more than a year, they wouldn't be up at corrections in Janesville, and they're waiting to be sent to a state facility, but the state facilities won't take them.
That's correct.
How many do we have? How many are there?
Well, I think I said earlier, there were probably 80, now 85. Obviously, every couple of weeks that goes up. So it's certainly the highest number we've ever had. I think in the past, the committee may have heard about our kind of futile attempts to get the state to come and take what is really their inmates at that point. And there is a provision in law that allows counties to, beyond a certain holding period of time, to charge the state for that inmate, the keeping of that inmate, but the state has never paid that bill. So I find it kind of disingenuous in a way that the state would say, well, we're going to open it up so that you can share your jails, but they're like our worst customer. And then when we try to get them to move on something, they just either ignore us or they throw another roadblock up. So it's frustrating because we are obligated to keep our own inmates. And then when we have, probably before this is over with, we'll have 100 inmates that really, quote, don't belong to us. They belong in a state facility and the state refuses to take them. The latest excuse they're giving is, well, as long as you have people in your facility who are COVID positive, then we're not going to take any. Well, that has now passed. As I said just a few minutes ago, we don't have any inmates in our facility that are positive. So that's a poor excuse going forward for them. Now I think it's really probably just stalling. So that's just some of the challenges we deal with on a weekly basis when it comes to inmate population and movement of inmates, and then dealing with a commission that is always ready to hand down some kind of violation, but very rarely are they there to really help you. But before you move on, I just want to go back to I think how this got started. I know Chief Bliley was on your last meeting and had to do with some improvements to the facility. Just to clarify, that was like, I believe, the third phase or the third year of what this overall project was. So I certainly understand the caution to that. And I'm certainly can find other areas of our sheriff's facilities that certainly need attention. But please know that, we just didn't throw that on you here kind of at the last minute. It was part of a plan from 3 years ago that this would be the last step. So.
Oh, indeed. Yeah, definitely. For sure.
And I think the reason, and this is Legislator Kuhn, I think the reason was beyond this particular discussion, but more in terms of waiting to see where the budget is for 2021 and where we've landed post, hopefully at some point post austerity. And he also indicated that probably wouldn't even begin until the fall. So it wasn't going to be depriving anybody of air conditioning in the summer. I believe that was the conversation that we had. Not that it can't come, be presented again at another time.
Nope, that's understood.
Well, again, I guess that's what I have. We thank you. So anybody else, excuse me, before we wrap up, does anybody have any additional questions, issues for Sheriff Conway before we end here?
I am going to ask a quick question, Sheriff Conway. Sorry about that. Despite the fact that the state is refusing to pay, I assume you're continuing to bill for those 85 inmates that are remaining there.
Yes.
That gets billed monthly, or how does that get billed out?
I'm really not sure of the frequency, but we do track it. We always track it. And so we have those numbers available to us, but it's more of a historical issue.
You've surrendered to the state.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Have you talked to the state delegation?
We've talked to many people, Bill, but getting them to move off of it. And it's just not Onondaga County. I talked to my colleagues in other counties across the state, and it's just, it's one of those bills that never gets paid.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's definitely on at least a couple members of the previous public safety committees, and I don't think this is a new topic, new conversation.
No.
But if they're closing state facilities, they must have room, aren't they, to take them?
If that question is for me, I just know that it's more of a convenient thing for them more than anything. We have the same situation when we're trying to get someone who has to go to an actual mental holding facility. And we have to go to great lengths to get the state to authorize someone to leave the facility to go where they can get really, really good care mental health wise. But, I just write it off to it's just more of a bureaucracy than anything else. But any help would be appreciated. That's money that's owed the county, not the sheriff's office. So,
Right.
we try to focus our energy, obviously, in other places right now that will give us more traction. But
Okay,
thank you for
well,
your-
listen, again, thank you. And
Thank you
we
very much.
we will continue this dialogue. We're always here. And if something, if there's a way that we can do stuff more efficiently, effectively, let's talk about it. So great. Thank you for the candor of the dialogue. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and if I should have a conversation or get called to a meeting or whatever, I certainly would keep the committee aware of what those discussions are.
Thank you.
All right, we'll look to have you back soon. Thanks again. Any other questions? Any other business before the committee?
I'd just like to make an observation if I could. At the very beginning of the meeting, Melanie made a mistake and confused Jim Rowley and Kevin Holmquist, and I'm glad that Jim Rowley doesn't take offense to that.
No, I'm okay, I guess.
He does look comfortable, though. He does look comfortable. All right. Unlike legislator Holmquist does not look comfortable. All right.
I am no Jim Rowley.
Yeah, no, none of us are. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, legislator Kuhn, can I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, legislator Rowley, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a great
Sheriff.
day, everybody.
Everyone,
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
take care.